Fear is not a reaction, it's a recognition. There's a moment that almost nobody talks about because it happens too fast and too quietly to be explained away. You walk into a space. Nothing dramatic happens. No music shifts, no spotlight hits you. And yet, something in the room changes. Not because you demanded attention, but because attention found you. You don't even need to be fully present yet. Your bag isn't down. Your seat isn't chosen. And still, the atmosphere adjusts like it just received new instructions. Here's the uncomfortable fact most people don't want to admit. Human beings are wired to detect authority long before language enters the picture. Long before someone speaks, the nervous system is already deciding who feels safe, who feels unpredictable, and who should not be tested. This isn't opinion, it's biology. The brain makes survival-based assessments in milliseconds, and sometimes those assessments look like fear. Now let's be clear, this isn't about intimidation, aggression, or trying to look important. If it were, everyone with a loud voice and a tight outfit would be ruling the world by now. And we both know that's not how reality works. This is about something subtler, something unsettling. The kind of presence that doesn't announce itself, but still rearranges the emotional furniture in the room. And the irony? You often don't notice it right away. You're too busy being normal, too busy minding your business. Meanwhile, someone across the room is suddenly very interested in their phone. Someone else forgets what they were about to say. Another person laughs a little too hard at nothing because silence just got uncomfortable. That's not coincidence. That's calibration. There's even a strange humor in it if you catch it early enough. You're standing there, thinking about errands or what you're eating later, while grown adults are internally renegotiating their confidence like, wait, why do I feel exposed right now? It's almost rude when you think about it. You didn't do anything, yet here they are, spiritually updating their settings. This isn't about ego, it's about awareness. Because once you understand what that look in their eyes really means, you stop questioning yourself. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop mistaking other people's unease for your responsibility. And most importantly, you begin to understand a truth that changes how you move through every room from that point forward. Some people don't fear you because you're loud. They fear you because something about you can't be handled casually. And once you see that, you never unsee it. Number one, they recognized a pattern you never announced. People fear what they cannot predict. They fear what makes no sense in their mental framework. When you walked in, they didn't just notice you. They noticed a rhythm, a consistency, a pattern that didn't fit into the chaos they'd been controlling. You didn't declare it, you didn't make a show, you didn't need anyone to validate your presence. And that, more than anything, unsettled them. They saw someone who had clearly moved through life with a kind of quiet strategy, someone whose actions followed a logic that only they themselves fully understood. It's subtle, but the human mind can detect these things instinctively. They sensed that behind your calm movements and neutral expressions, there was an underlying order, a process they couldn't predict and couldn't manipulate. Fear showed up because patterns like yours aren't just visible. They are threatening to those who rely on confusion, noise, or manipulation to maintain control. They felt exposed, even if you hadn't spoken a word. They couldn't guess your next move, and that alone is terrifying to people who live in reactive worlds, where they assume everyone else will stumble and panic under pressure. Your consistency, your grounded way of handling the room, communicated something silently but powerfully. You are already ahead. You already know what you're doing, and you aren't flustered by the chaos that surrounds them. What they experienced wasn't just intimidation, it was recognition. Deep down, they realized that someone who walks with internal precision is someone who can't be cornered, someone who doesn't have to explain themselves, someone whose next step is already calculated while they're scrambling. That's why the fear in their eyes isn't about what you did, but what they now know you could do, because your pattern has already revealed competence, awareness, and a clarity they cannot match. And once someone recognizes a pattern they cannot predict or control, the fear lingers. It's not temporary. It sits with them, unspoken, a quiet alarm that tells them they underestimated the room, the situation, and ultimately you. Number 2, your presence invalidated their hierarchy. Some people spend their entire lives building invisible kingdoms, ranking themselves and others according to rules only they understand. These hierarchies are fragile, dependent on fear, submission, or the illusion of control. When you walked in, you didn't ask for permission, you didn't seek approval, and you certainly didn't play by their unspoken rules. Your energy alone told them that you were not participating in their system. You existed outside of it, and that is something people with fragile egos cannot tolerate. They had constructed their world with invisible ladders and boxes, thinking everyone else would fit neatly inside. You didn't. You couldn't be slotted, measured, or labeled, and that alone was enough to make them uneasy. Their fear wasn't about you being loud or dominant. It was about the subtle disruption of their control. You didn't challenge them verbally or physically, yet the moment you appeared, the invisible order they depended on trembled. People who rely on hierarchy to feel safe immediately feel unmoored when someone refuses to acknowledge the rules. You didn't give them leverage, you didn't argue, and you didn't declare superiority. You simply were. Your presence became a mirror, showing them that their system wasn't as secure as they thought. They couldn't hide behind posturing, titles, or dominance, because none of it applied to you. That kind of fear comes from awareness that the game they thought they were winning is already shifting. They realized their strategies, their tactics, their clever manipulations were ineffective. In that moment, they understood that influence and control don't come from noise or intimidation. They come from a presence that cannot be moved or undermined. And seeing that, their fear is involuntary. It creeps in quietly, a tightening in their chest, a subtle shift in their gaze. You didn't force it, you revealed it. They couldn't maintain their hierarchy because you simply wouldn't acknowledge it. That's why the fear was real, unspoken, and unmistakable. It's not just about walking into a room. It's about walking in and letting them see that their world, their rules, and their supposed power are irrelevant to you. And when people feel irrelevant in your presence, fear becomes the only response left. Number 3, they saw someone who could not be rushed or cornered. Fear appears most strongly when someone realizes that control is impossible. When you walked into the room, it wasn't the way you moved or the way you stood that unsettled people. It was the fact that you could not be hurried, pressured, or trapped. There's a subtle power in someone who operates on their own timing, someone whose decisions and actions are measured, deliberate, and independent of external pressure. People who rely on manipulating others, creating urgency, or forcing outcomes immediately felt exposed because they could not force you to act or react on their schedule. That is terrifying to anyone used to bending the world around them to their comfort. They sensed that no amount of subtle nudges, whispered suggestions, or strategic interruptions would break your composure. You don't flinch, you don't over-explain, and you don't scramble to please. That presence communicates something deeper. You have patience, awareness, and self-possession. You're not reactive, you're not desperate. And someone who can't be moved is someone who cannot be controlled. That realization alone sets off an internal alarm for people who measure power by quick wins and visible dominance. The fear in their eyes came from understanding something unspoken. You are not negotiable on their terms. They may try to create pressure, but your calmness absorbs it, leaving them flustered, unsure, and ultimately powerless. They feel trapped in a loop of their own making while you remain unshaken, unhurried, and quietly in command. That makes people nervous because it exposes their impatience, their impulsiveness, and their inability to manage situations they thought they controlled. Being someone who cannot be rushed is not arrogance, it's clarity. You know your timing, your boundaries, and your capacity. And people instinctively fear what they cannot influence, predict, or manipulate. When you move through life anchored in that steadiness, every glance, every hesitation, every attempt to pressure you only reinforces the truth they cannot admit. They are not in control, and you never will be. That realization alone is enough to make the bravest falter, because fear is not always loud. Sometimes it is simply the quiet recognition that you are untouchable on their terms. Number 4, you triggered their memory of past losses. Fear isn't always about what's happening in the present. Often, it comes from a sudden confrontation with something people thought they had buried or forgotten. When you walked in, they didn't just see you. They felt echoes of every mistake, every miscalculation, every time they underestimated someone and paid the price. Their eyes betrayed recognition, a flicker of panic, that their past failures were about to be mirrored in the present. It's subtle, but people carry memory like a shadow, and you became the living reminder of moments they wanted erased. You didn't do anything consciously, yet your presence stirred a history they couldn't rewrite. The fear in the room came from the realization that you were not naive, easily swayed, or predictable. You carried yourself with a calm precision that whispered without words, "I see clearly, and I remember." And memories of their own incompetence, arrogance, or misjudgment resurfaced in real time. They felt exposed not because of what you had done, but because they knew that they had miscalculated before. And history has a way of repeating itself when the lesson isn't truly learned. You became the mirror that reflected the consequences of underestimating someone. They couldn't hide behind excuses, clever talk, or false confidence. The room adjusted around your presence because it sensed accountability. People fear what forces them to confront their own past missteps, especially when those missteps are tied to pride or power. You didn't need to speak, threaten, or dominate. Your mere existence, your awareness, and your composure triggered the discomfort of recognition. That fear is different from the fear of aggression. It's quiet, insidious, and piercing. It sits deep in the chest, making them second-guess every decision they've ever made regarding people like you. They realized in that split second that they had underestimated someone once before, and now that someone had walked back into their world, fully equipped, fully aware, and impossible to manipulate. And that is a kind of fear that lingers far longer than any shouted threat. The fear of consequences remembered, of lessons unlearned, and of someone who sees clearly enough to ensure history never repeats itself to your disadvantage. Number 5. They felt you were internally referenced, not externally validated. Some people live their lives constantly checking mirrors, not actual mirrors, but the reflections of themselves in the eyes of others. Their self-worth, their decisions, even their moods are tied to approval, applause, or acknowledgement. When you walked in, they immediately sensed something different. You weren't looking to prove anything to anyone, and that alone is unnerving. You weren't scanning for reactions, adjusting your behavior for comfort, or performing for acceptance. You were fully grounded in yourself, internally referenced, and that created a ripple of unease because it's impossible to influence someone who doesn't rely on validation. The fear in their eyes came from the recognition that their usual tactics would not work. Flattery, subtle pressure, intimidation, or manipulation, all of it becomes ineffective when the person they are trying to control is anchored in their own internal standard. You didn't need to speak loudly or act aggressively. Your calm, measured presence told them you have a system that operates independently of them. And people instinctively fear what they cannot sway or dictate. They realized in an instant that your confidence wasn't performative. It wasn't built on the opinions of others or temporary victories. It was rooted in your own understanding of yourself, your own sense of direction, and your own awareness of your value. That kind of self-possession is subtle, but lethal to insecure people because it reveals how fragile their own strategies are. You aren't someone they can manipulate with the usual tricks, and they know it. What makes this even more powerful is that being internally referenced doesn't announce itself. You don't have to declare your independence or your clarity. It radiates naturally. The fear they felt wasn't because you were confrontational. It was because you were unknowable, untouchable, and unbending in the quietest way possible. You move according to your own rules, and that makes people who rely on external cues suddenly question everything they thought they controlled. In that moment, they understood you are not participating in their theater, and that truth unsettles them far more than any action ever could. Number 6, your calm suggested experience, not innocence. There's a difference between someone who is calm because they haven't faced real pressure and someone who is calm because they have. When you walked into the room, the fear that flashed in their eyes wasn't about your presence itself. It was the recognition that you had already been through storms they couldn't imagine and emerged unshaken. Your calm wasn't naive, it wasn't fragile, and it wasn't temporary. It carried the weight of experience, and people instinctively sense that kind of energy. They knew immediately that any attempt to rattle you would fail, not because you were ignorant of threat, but because you had learned how to navigate it, survive it, and transcend it. That realization is subtle, but it hits hard. They could see it in the way you held yourself, in the quiet timing of your movements, in the unhurried way you scanned the room. Every subtle gesture spoke of someone who had been tested repeatedly and had learned to measure, observe, and respond with precision. People who rely on chaos, manipulation, or fear as tools feel exposed in the presence of someone who doesn't panic, someone whose internal compass is steady, regardless of external pressure. They understood, without needing words, that you had survived situations they couldn't control, that you had endured scrutiny, challenge, and opposition without losing your center. Your calm communicated something more than experience. It communicated competence, endurance, and mastery. They felt vulnerable because they realized their usual tactics wouldn't work. You weren't reacting emotionally, over-explaining, or seeking approval. You were simply present, fully aware, fully composed. And that quiet command unsettles people because it exposes their own impulsiveness, insecurity, and tendency to overestimate control. Fear in this context isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it creeps in through subtle recognition. They saw in you someone who knows the world's harshness, has survived it, and has no reason to prove anything. That awareness alone makes them second-guess their assumptions, question their strategies, and recognize deep down that you cannot be underestimated or manipulated. In a room full of chaos and performance, your calm is the silent verdict they never wanted to face. Number 7, they realized you observe before you engage. The moment you entered, they noticed something subtle but powerful. You weren't rushing in, reacting, or performing. You were taking in the room, the energy, the patterns, and the people, quietly and thoroughly. That kind of observation is unsettling to those who rely on impulse, manipulation, or superficial impressions to maintain control. People who attempt to dominate through noise or theatrics suddenly realize they're being studied, not confronted, and it shakes the foundation of their confidence. They sensed immediately that you weren't someone who could be fooled, rushed, or cornered because you first absorb, process, and understand before making any move. Observation, in your case, isn't passive. It's a tool, a quiet signal of awareness that communicates power without words. You notice micro-expressions, timing, hesitations, and inconsistencies that most people assume will go undetected. That level of awareness is intimidating because it creates unpredictability. They couldn't calculate your next step, anticipate your reaction, or manipulate the situation in the way they usually do. Every glance, every action, every pause you take becomes a subtle declaration. You see what is happening, and you are already 3 moves ahead. The fear in their eyes wasn't about aggression or dominance. It was about realization. They realized that you operate from knowledge, not assumption, and that you won't be caught off guard. They saw someone whose presence forces accountability without a single word being spoken. You don't need to announce intelligence or control. It radiates naturally through the precision of your observation. That makes people uncomfortable because observation is revealing. It exposes their gaps, their weaknesses, and their tendency to act without consideration. In the presence of someone who sees before they act, you are reminded of your own impulsiveness and the mistakes that could have been avoided with just a fraction of that awareness. They understood instantly that nothing could slip past you unnoticed, and that realization triggered a subtle but undeniable fear. They weren't afraid of confrontation. They were afraid of being fully understood before they even had a chance to move. And that is the kind of presence that commands respect, caution, and, yes, a touch of unease. Number 8, your energy didn't seek to dominate. It set a boundary. There's a difference between someone who tries to control a room and someone who simply defines where they stand. When you walked in, people didn't feel pressure from you. They felt the invisible line of your presence. You weren't loud, demanding, or aggressive. You didn't need to prove anything, but you made it immediately clear, without words, that certain behaviors, energies, and assumptions wouldn't be tolerated around you. That's the kind of energy that triggers fear in people who rely on influence, manipulation, or dominance to feel secure. They are used to bending others to their rhythm, but you refused to bend. You simply existed with your own rules. They recognized almost instantly that no amount of posturing or theatrics would cross the boundary you established. People who are accustomed to testing limits, pushing buttons, or creating chaos for control suddenly feel exposed when they encounter someone whose internal perimeter cannot be breached. Your energy communicates confidence not through assertion, but through firmness. A quiet strength that doesn't negotiate for respect because it already commands it internally. That's unsettling for those who thrive on insecurity, because your boundary doesn't leave them room to manipulate or underestimate you. The fear they felt wasn't loud or immediate. It came in subtle shifts, the hesitation in their gestures, the pause in their speech, the quick glance to see how far they could push. Your calm, steady presence spoke volumes. It said without a single word that you are not a participant in their games, that intrusion is impossible, and that influence over you is irrelevant. That kind of fear is different from intimidation. It doesn't rely on action or aggression. It's the recognition that the rules they thought applied to everyone simply don't apply to you. Your energy, in its quiet power, exposed a truth that many people avoid confronting. Strength isn't always about pushing. Sometimes it's about holding firm. When someone encounters that, they instinctively respect it and fear it. They fear the consequences of crossing a line they cannot see or touch, and they fear being measured against someone who refuses to bend. That is the kind of presence that commands awareness, recalibration, and cautious respect without ever needing to raise a voice. Number 9. They sensed you could walk away without damage. There's an instinctive fear that comes when people realize you don't need them, that their presence, their approval, or their control isn't essential to your stability or your success. When you walked in, they felt it immediately. You weren't desperate for recognition, validation, or influence. You weren't performing to impress or bending to conform. Your presence alone communicated a subtle but undeniable truth. You could leave this room, this situation, or these people without losing a single thing that mattered. That realization unsettled them because most people operate with invisible dependencies, quietly tethered to outcomes, attention, or acceptance. You were untethered. The fear they experienced wasn't about confrontation or aggression. It was about irrelevance. They realized that all their attempts to influence, manipulate, or control would fail because you don't require them for your peace, your progress, or your presence. People who rely on comparison, competition, or leverage over others suddenly feel exposed when they meet someone who exists independently of their world. They couldn't threaten you, distract you, or bend your actions because your power isn't borrowed, it's inherent. That awareness creates a quiet panic. When someone understands that they cannot anchor you emotionally, professionally, or socially, they feel the fragility of their own influence. Every subtle gesture, every word they might have used to assert control becomes meaningless. You aren't reacting to them because you don't need to. That makes them reconsider their strategies, their assumptions, and even their own sense of importance. The fear is invisible but tangible, a tightening in the chest that signals they've misjudged the stakes. Your ability to walk away without damage is not arrogance, it is freedom. It's the clarity that your worth and your trajectory are not tied to anyone else's opinion or behavior. And that is profoundly intimidating to those who rely on external validation to feel secure. They understood in that instant that you could remove yourself from the equation entirely, leaving them scrambling to regain footing in a world they no longer control. That is the kind of presence that shifts energy, demands recalibration, and quietly enforces respect without a single word spoken. Number 10. You didn't carry the energy of proving anything. There's a power in not needing to prove yourself, and people instinctively recognize it. When you walked in, it wasn't your words, your posture, or even your expression that caused the stir. It was the absence of performance. You weren't broadcasting competence, demanding respect, or overcompensating with bravado. You simply existed, fully anchored in yourself, and that quiet certainty hit harder than any loud display. People who rely on projection, appearances, or the validation of others felt it immediately. They sensed someone who doesn't need to fight for acknowledgement, someone whose presence alone communicates authority, clarity, and stability. Fear in this sense isn't about intimidation, it's about recognition. They understood without speaking that your confidence doesn't come from applause or comparison. You don't need to impress, and that unsettles those who spend their lives measuring themselves against others. Your energy told them a story they couldn't disrupt, that you are secure, self-aware, and fully operational on your own terms. That alone is threatening to anyone whose influence depends on insecurity, uncertainty, or overestimation of their own power. They noticed that every move you made was intentional, not performative. You didn't overreact, you didn't dominate conversation, and you didn't try to control perception. You existed without agenda, and that made them question everything they thought they understood about influence and authority. When someone doesn't carry the need to prove anything, it communicates a depth that is invisible yet undeniable. It implies experience, discernment, and independence. They realized instantly that they could not manipulate your image, exploit your ego, or provoke a reaction. That fear lingers because it comes from truth. You don't need external validation, which makes every tactic they've relied on obsolete. In a room full of people constantly performing, your quiet self-possession is a mirror that exposes superficiality and insecurity. They can't touch it, they can't challenge it, and they can't undermine it. That is why your presence unsettles them, why their eyes betray it, and why the fear they feel isn't temporary. It's a recognition that you operate on a level entirely outside their reach. Number 11. They felt you would remember everything. Fear often comes not from what someone can do in the moment, but from what they know will be remembered. When you walked in, people sensed it immediately. The subtle awareness that nothing they said, nothing they did, would escape your attention. Your presence communicated a quiet, almost invisible vigilance, the kind that makes people second-guess their own words and actions. They knew that any misstep, slight, or attempt at manipulation would not vanish the moment they left the room. You weren't reactive, loud, or threatening, but your energy suggested meticulous retention, a mind that catalogues behavior with precision and a focus that doesn't forget. This recognition unnerves people because most rely on forgetfulness, ignorance, or selective perception to maintain their comfort. They assume that if no one is reacting immediately, the consequences are negligible, but someone like you doesn't operate that way. You internalize, process, and remember, not to punish recklessly, but to understand fully, to measure, and to act with clarity when the timing is right. That kind of awareness is terrifying to anyone who has relied on slip-ups, deception, or subtle coercion to gain an advantage. The fear they displayed wasn't about confrontation. It was the quiet realization that every attempt to undermine, manipulate, or mislead you would be recorded, analyzed, and recalled when it mattered most. They recognized that mistakes would follow them, not because you seek revenge, but because memory is part of your power. This is a rare type of presence, one that doesn't need to declare dominance to be respected, feared, or understood. Your ability to remember everything changes how people interact with you instantly. Their gestures become cautious, their words measured, and their confidence shaken. They know they can't rely on tricks or omissions, because you see clearly, absorb details, and retain knowledge that can't be erased. That quiet, persistent awareness is a kind of authority that demands respect. It's not flashy. It doesn't announce itself, but it leaves an impression that lingers. A subtle fear rooted in the understanding that their actions around you are never truly forgotten, and that realization is far more unsettling than any momentary confrontation. Number 12. Your stillness reflected their inner disorder. There's a unique kind of fear that arises not from someone's actions, but from the absence of them. When you walked in, your stillness was magnetic, precise, and unnervingly steady. You weren't frantic, defensive, or performing for attention. You simply existed in a way that was fully anchored, completely aware, and entirely unshakable. And that stillness did something remarkable. It reflected back the chaos, insecurity, and internal turbulence of everyone around you. People who thrive on control, noise, or constant movement suddenly saw their own instability mirrored in your composed presence, and that awareness triggered an instinctive unease. Your calm wasn't passive or hollow. It wasn't a blank space to be filled. It was intentional, deliberate, and fully alive, sending a clear signal that you were operating from mastery, not reaction. For those who live in constant tension, your steadiness becomes a mirror, exposing every impulsive thought, every insecurity, and every attempt to manipulate. They realize, often without understanding why, that their usual tactics, pressure, distraction, or performance are meaningless in your presence. Their inner disorder becomes impossible to hide because your stillness doesn't compete with it. It simply highlights it. The fear they experienced wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet, creeping, and unmistakably personal. It's the kind of fear that hits when someone realizes they are under scrutiny without even being addressed, that their inner chaos is readable without explanation, and that their patterns of instability are transparent to someone who doesn't need to act to be aware. Your stillness communicates control, experience, and clarity that they can neither match nor manipulate, and that's deeply unsettling. Being still in a world of constant noise is more than presence. It's authority. It forces others to confront themselves, recalibrate their energy, and recognize that influence, fear, or manipulation cannot touch you. The fear in their eyes isn't about what you will do. It's about what you reveal by simply being. Your stillness is a mirror, and in that reflection, they see what they've been avoiding, their own disorder contrasted against your unshakable control. Number 13, they realized you could not be easily labeled. People rely on labels because labels create comfort. They simplify, categorize, and give them a sense of control. When you walked in, they immediately sensed that none of their usual boxes applied to you. You didn't fit a predictable mold, and that ambiguity unsettled them. They couldn't define you as weak or strong, naive or experienced, agreeable or aggressive. You weren't performing to match any expectation, and that refusal to be pinned down made them uneasy. Labels are a safety net for the insecure, and your presence tore that net away. The fear they displayed came from the inability to predict your behavior. People are comfortable when they can anticipate reactions, influence outcomes, or assign meaning quickly. You offered none of that. Every subtle move you made, every word unspoken, suggested that you operate according to your own internal logic, not according to the rules or expectations they try to impose. That unpredictability is disarming. It communicates power without a single loud gesture because it signals that you cannot be manipulated, pigeonholed, or underestimated. They felt the instability of their own assumptions immediately. Their previous strategies of assessment, the casual judgments, the quick categorizations, the subtle manipulations, all failed in your presence. They realized almost instinctively that they were dealing with someone whose depth, awareness, and independence couldn't be reduced to simple definitions. That's the kind of fear that creeps in quietly but runs deep. It's the recognition that they can't prepare for your next move because there isn't a predictable pattern to exploit. Not being easily labeled isn't arrogance, it's self-possession. It shows that your identity, your energy, and your decisions are anchored internally, not shaped by the perception or approval of others. People instinctively sense this and recognize a gap between themselves and someone untouchable by convention or assumption. That fear is subtle, unsettling, and unavoidable. In your presence, they understand that their labels, categories, and judgments are meaningless. You exist on a plane they cannot simplify, and the realization of that power is both invisible and devastatingly real. Number 14, they understood you would outlast them. Some people operate on quick wins, fleeting influence, and temporary dominance, measuring power by immediate reactions and short-term results. When you walked in, they realized that you didn't play that way. Your presence communicated endurance, patience, and a quiet confidence that comes from knowing the long game. That understanding unsettled them deeply, because it meant that whatever strategies, manipulations, or judgments they relied on to assert control would ultimately be irrelevant. You weren't there for a moment. You were there for the long arc, and they recognized it instantly. The fear in their eyes came from the realization that they were temporary, reactive forces in a space you had already mastered internally. They could create tension, chaos, or distraction, but none of it would wear you down. They could attempt to provoke, impress, or intimidate, but your foundation was steady, unshakable, and designed to endure far beyond their reach. They understood in that instant that you weren't going anywhere, and that their short-term maneuvers would crumble against your quiet persistence. It wasn't just about patience. It was about a kind of relentless consistency that is almost invisible until it becomes undeniable. You move with purpose, observe carefully, and act deliberately. Every decision is measured not for immediate gain, but for long-term consequence. And people instinctively sense that you are already several steps ahead. They feared the weight of time working in your favor, the inevitability that they would eventually be exposed for overestimating themselves or underestimating you. Their fear was subtle but penetrating. It wasn't about confrontation today. It was about the future they couldn't control. They understood that you wouldn't be rattled, outmaneuvered, or replaced easily. You would persist quietly, steadily, and effectively. And that knowledge forced them into a rare state of unease. They saw someone whose endurance and internal strength make temporary strategies irrelevant. They realized they were in the presence of someone who could outlast, outthink, and outmaneuver without lifting a hand. And that recognition, silent, slow, and undeniable, is a fear far stronger than any loud threat could ever create. The truth is, the fear you saw in their eyes when you walked in wasn't random, and it wasn't superficial. It wasn't about aggression, loudness, or dominance. It was about recognition, the recognition of someone who operates beyond their expectations, beyond their manipulations, and beyond their control. Each subtle movement, each deliberate pause, each unshakable moment of calm communicated truths they couldn't ignore. You are aware, you are grounded, and you are anchored in a power they cannot touch. They felt exposed, unsettled, and out of alignment, not because you sought to intimidate, but because your energy, your presence, and your internal clarity revealed every weakness, miscalculation, and insecurity they hoped would remain hidden. You don't need to perform to prove anything. You don't need to rush or react to satisfy anyone's assumptions. You observe, you remember, and you exist with a precision that is invisible yet undeniable. People who rely on external control, fleeting influence, or manipulation feel the tremor of your presence immediately. You disrupt without force, unsettle without confrontation, and communicate authority without ever raising your voice. That is the kind of power that commands respect naturally, quietly, and permanently. And here's the deeper truth that ties it all together. The fear they experience is a reflection of your unshakable consistency, your awareness, and your endurance. It is a silent acknowledgement that you are operating on a plane they cannot access, that you are untouchable on their terms, and that time, observation, and clarity are all quietly working in your favor. From patterns they cannot predict to boundaries they cannot cross, from calm that signals experience to presence that cannot be labeled. You are a force they simply cannot calculate. And that realization, more than anything else, is what leaves them unsettled. So as you carry this awareness forward, remember the power already present within you. Recognize it, honor it, and never allow anyone else's unease to diminish it. The world may not always understand it, and people will continue to underestimate it, but your presence alone is a statement that cannot be ignored. If this insight resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this with someone who needs to see it. The more we awaken to our true presence, the clearer we become, and the further we rise beyond the limitations others try to impose. Let's continue to move with awareness, with power, and with the unshakable clarity that makes the world take notice. God bless you.